So going into 2024, I know that one of the big focuses is how to not be a broke musician. And it's not just being an artist or a musician or a record label owner or a publisher in any kind of walk of life where you are an entrepreneur. That's really what we're talking about. Tell me, Stephen Strum, what's the number one way that business owners will lose money this year?
The number one thing that people find themselves with when they have a problem, when they are losing money, making money, it all has to do with clarity. Clarity around your business practice, clarity around your budgeting, whether that means something called a profit and loss statement or a P&L for short. If it's a new business, what's called a pro forma, which is like what we anticipate, and you create a strategic plan. If you're a football fan, you don't just show up to a football game without a game plan. You practice for weeks on
Okay,
that,
so
right?
so
And if
real
you
quick
have
on that, for someone who's hearing these words, profit and loss, pro forma, what is that? Is that a Word document? Is that an Excel sheet? How do I make that?
most times I see P&Ls and performance like on Excel. There's templates online, and it allows you to have the ability. And then, of course, professionally financial advisors, they have like some very specific software. But for people just starting out, a simple Excel spreadsheet. Here's the sources of my income. Here's the sources of my expenses. Now, within expenses, there's a couple types. Fixed expenses that cannot go, no matter your rent does not go down, no matter what. And discretionary expenses, whether it's I want to create some marketing on my record label, right? Those type of things. And then you have this, bucket of miscellaneous where you have the opportunity, to do what you want to do. But by kind of portioning it off at 60% fixed, 20% miscellaneous, 20% variable expenses, that allows you to cost control, because if you do find yourself getting kind of, in the ditch with expenses, well, then you can go all the way down to fixed, and, that's 50% what you thought. The danger is when people take those variable expenses and turn them into fixed expenses, now you can't get around that, right? And those are some of the things, like, for example, your first hire. That's a great example. W-2 full-time employee, right? Full-time employee prices. Well, if you're not quite there, what about maybe hire somebody that's part-time? There's many services that people have that run schedules for people, that do editing, that you can do as an ad hoc that won't be around
So,
forever.
so with basically what you're saying, because I would say, what's the number one way that business owners are going to lose money this year? And you go, getting clarity and actually looking at your money
And reviewing
and
it.
reviewing it. And so that's why having something like a simple Excel sheet or Word document. So once a month, sit down, open up your bank accounts, right? Open up your credit cards, see where your money is going, because a lot of us have subscriptions that we're paying for. We're losing money unnecessarily. Now, we were kind of talking about, for example, buying your Starbucks. Tell us about, why is it important that maybe we don't buy our Starbucks? How does this add
Sure.
up?
One of the big things, right? We'll use Starbucks as an example. There's a great book that was written. It's called The Automatic Millionaire, and it's the latte effect. So think about Starbucks, $5 a day. Don't even think about it, right? 35 bucks a week times time times time. If you were to just not do Starbucks as an example, and nothing against Starbucks, love me a white chocolate mocha. It's fabulous. I'll be up till next Thursday if I have one of those with the amount of caffeine in it. But if I just don't get that $5 every day and I go invest that in anything, you can actually pay for your child's college education just by not doing Starbucks every day. Now, apply that accordingly, but yeah, it's quite powerful when you look to trim some expenses or redirect some other stuff and you do something else with that money. It is fabulous what can happen, and it can really make a big difference for people, both in the short term, in the midterm, and in the long term.
Okay, so one thing I'm thinking about for the new year, thinking about all the ways that, how do we avoid losing our money? How do we avoid being broke? And for me, one thing that applies very much in the last even decade of my life and my businesses that I built and all of that is the things that I didn't know are what cost me the most amount of money, because there was a time delay in learning it and then implementing it. Had I known about, hiring staff and being smart about it, or better using my time, for example. So for me, I can put a dollar amount on it. It's a lot. So for you, so for 2024, what would you say is the number one way for someone not to lose money if they're trying to build their own thing? As an artist, as a musician, as a business owner, what would you say?
Stay within a strategic plan that is reasonable and even conservative, right? Because if you have a revenue objective of, let's say, I'm going to make $100,000 this year. I'm going to do it. Yes, you are. Great. $100,000 revenue. Well, organically and naturally, your expenses adjust to that, right? So what's going to happen is if you say, hey, I'm going to make 100 grand, in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, okay, if I make 100,000, 60,000, it's already working in the back of your head. the number one way for them to not lose money on that by setting those reasonable goals and objectives is reviewing it and making sure you're on pace. And if you hate it, get somebody to help you with it, right? You can get services online. You don't need to get a full-born, attorney, right? On a monthly retainer. You don't need to get a full-on CPA, CFO. Have somebody help you put those things together. They're not hard to do, but if it's somebody who's not used to doing them, they may as well be impossible.
Okay, so we're going to look at our money and we're going to try to do it at least once a month. But then what about just kind of, having targets, for example, as far as where we're going quarterly, annually? Like that's really what you're saying. You'll have clarity, stay focused, because you're going to lose money if you don't, because money will just go places. Things come up, expenses happen, right? Personal.
Yeah, it's and if you're not watching it, right? So, the biggest thing that I would have for somebody, right, when they do this stuff, as they're building a business, is to create that profit and loss, the P&L, the spreadsheet, right? And just literally go down there. And there's some amazing tools online that can be used that will actually track expenses. There's some stuff that, we offer for free, anything that they come out there and you can literally put in how much is my dry cleaning, down to the granular level that you want to get. It doesn't have to be this giant complicated thing that, somebody who's been doing this stuff for 18 years, like me, knows how to do. You can literally go and just like, how much is my food? And then you put that in there, and then it'll basically break it down and say, okay, well, this is what my expenses are, and you got to keep to that. Now, you can plus or minus 5 to 10% because, life happens, opportunities happen. But far too often, and talking to some of the folks in your music career, and I've played the piano since forever, do you really need to restring all of your guitars, right? Like right now, because those things can cost money, right? Do I really need this equipment? Can I get away with this equipment? Or maybe I'll buy that equipment, but after I get a gig that pays me X, right? So those are things that, you can invest a lot of infrastructure in your business, but I think it's relative to the revenue, right? Do I need to buy another computer? I don't know where, but it also gives you a little motivation. It says, I am going to buy myself this new piece of musical equipment when I get to this amount of revenue. So what happens? You get to that amount of revenue, so you can, have the joy of having the ability to buy something like that. So I always offer my clients to say, hey, live your life. Let's set some revenue goals. When you hit those goals, make sure to do something for yourself, right? And if you're not going to do something for yourself, do something for your, significant other, kids, whatever makes you happy. Donate it to charity. Always make sure you have a little something for yourself that you can enjoy that, right? Work like a dog for 12 weeks. Don't give up. But, on that 13th week, take a breath. It'll keep you from burning out. Do something that's good for you. And in that 12 weeks, there's a really good thing called the 12-week year. And basically what it does is it breaks the year into 4 chunks of 12 weeks. And so you work like an animal, right, for 90 days straight, and then you take a day off or a week off. Week off's a little hard to do, but it allows you to build your stuff quarterly, measure it monthly, but then at the end of that quarter, it's like that year's gone, because you also, with other things that really hurt business owners, is you get the head trash, right? You look at, a business owner in June that their first part of their year is not good, and you got to help them understand to forget it, or else all they're going to do is have the bad year, because it's just almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right. Think about football, right? How many quarterbacks, they have to forget that interception, go right back out and, sling the rock so they can win the game. It's the same thing for business owners. Yeah, if you had a bad quarter, what are you going to do to fix the quarter? But do it in segments so that you can segment out those negative ones, and it'll actually give you more productivity in the following quarters to the end of the year.
So relative to the revenues, let's go back to that. So, one thing that I'm really thinking about for this year is finding the constraints in my business and really hyper-focusing on what's that one thing that's preventing us from growing or causing us a lot of money. And sometimes it's people, and sometimes we have people that we need to fire. And it's just because it's family, it's friends, it's awkward, we don't want to, it's going to be difficult, we trained them so much, but nonetheless, it's causing us to lose actual money and time. So find the constraint. But, we talked a little bit about making sure, and I think you had said about 50% of your baseline, your rent, your food, that should be the 50% of your income. And then we break it up from there. What part would you say should be dedicated towards investing in yourself? And where I'm going with this is, for me, there was a program that I went through, and it was $10,000. And it was the most expensive thing, and I didn't have really the money set aside for it. But the promise of what it would give to me and my business and the skill set was enough that I did it. and we just had to kind of figure it out. Now, it resulted in something like $50,000 within a couple of months right afterwards because we implemented the skill sets and things like that. So I'm a big proponent on investing in yourself, but how important do you think that is?
It's probably one of the most important things you can imagine. I work in my profession with a lot of professional, lawyers, doctors, attorneys, engineers, et cetera. And everybody, and I'll use one that's on everybody's mind, right? Student loan debt. And so, there's good debt, bad debt. So student loan debt, to become a lawyer and get a law degree and be able to practice law, that's really good debt because you have cost a couple $100,000 to get there, but you can now make that every year type of a thing. When you talk about investing of yourself, it may not translate directly to the bottom line right away. But the thing that you have to remember is even though you may not be seeing a profit, you're building, whether it's a reputation, you're building relationships. Not everything is going to be dollars and cents, month one, but everything that you do that's consistent with the goal that you're trying to achieve, you're building equity, whether it's in yourself or your business. They call it elbow grease, right? And as far as, blood, sweat, and tears, and what you're putting into something may not immediately generate that dollar. But when you look at the overall picture, every dollar you invest, 38 cents return. The thing you got to be patient with is it doesn't necessarily come back in the same year. In my own business, I have started off by myself and I did everything you could possibly imagine on my own. I discovered my constraints. Paperwork is terrible. I definitely have a great team that does paperwork when somebody has a question, because a checkbox on an application of an investment account, for example, can mean all the difference in the world in 30 years. So I learned that I know how to do all of it. And then I hired a part-timer, then a full-timer, then a 1.5, 2, so on and so forth. But I know that I'm going to get the ROI because I'm building that so that I can build economies of scale. It's just sometimes it's lack of patience. People, you got to understand, it's investing in your business. If your business was an oak tree, right, it starts off as an acorn. And most people, they don't think about this, right? So an acorn spends the first year of its life underground. You don't know it's there. What's it doing? It's building roots, right? So when an acorn or a little oak tree sprouts that first little green leaf out of the ground, you can't kill an oak tree because it's been building the roots for the last year. And the roots could be financial stability, building at relationships, having the exposure in the areas. I mean, very similar to this podcast, right? You and I have had the opportunity to collaborate personally, professionally, and now we're doing this podcast together where we're building that relationship. We're building this resource for other people. You and I may make $0 on this podcast. And it's not necessarily the goal of that, but you're offering value to people. And that builds a reputation that's not necessarily transactionally driven. And that's one of the big pitfalls a lot of people make, especially new business owners, because I get survival mode. I get it. I've been there. We've all been there. If you've ever started a business or thinking about starting a business, the first 5 years is like survive. And the next 5 years is, try to pay yourself all the money you borrowed from yourself, or other people. But at the end of the day, you're building your brand. And oftentimes people want to associate a relationship with a transaction. And, 90% of the relationships that I have now, whether it's Strum Financial Advisor, the TV show business that I do, whatever, 90% of the people that I know that really think highly of me, I don't have a single line of business with them now, but they'll call me at random and say, hey, I've got a guy that really needs your help with this, and you're the guy. So trying to delineate the transaction from the relationship it's a lot harder than you think.
Well, and I think that just goes back to having a skill set, right, that is valuable to other people. It's one of the most incredibly important things that you can ever do, especially if you're trying to build your own thing, right? And so, even
Correct.
from a making friends standpoint, it's way easier if you can bring something of value to the table and just be like, even, you can contribute to the conversation. You have a skill set, you can do editing and mentorship and, go down the gambit. So, something I always...
Well,
Go ahead.
As an example, when we talk about building relationships, so Strum professionally, I am a financial advisor and I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people in the professional services industry. I'll use lawyers as a great example. We have one on the phone here or on the podcast. I walk into a room filled with 100 lawyers. Would I like to have every single one of those 100 lawyers a client of Strum at some level? Of course I would. They're my target demographic. They are people that I know how to speak their language. But statistically speaking, if I walk into a room of 100 people, maybe 10 of them may truly be interested in what I have to say. So do I really want to burn those 90% of the people? So now I walk into the next room of 100 lawyers or 100 doctors or 100 entrepreneurs, and 90 of them go running the other way. That's not how you want to build your relationship. And it doesn't do well for your brand, because then when people call, when you call people, they know that I go, oh, here he comes or here she comes that wants to at some point sell me something. And so I've really worked a long time in my career building relationships that are not necessarily transactional, to where I get calls all over the country, whether it's a speaking engagement, doing a podcast, having somebody come in on the TV show, and people at least know who I am. They know who Steve Strum is. It's either me or a podiatrist in Minnesota. And if you were to Google the Steve Strum, this one, they think I'm the top 5, 6, 7 hits that you get on Google, save the podiatrist, which kind of oscillates between number 3 and 4. But when I call somebody, they know who I am. Stockbroking, financial advisor guy is what I do. But more importantly is they know who I am and how I could provide value for them. And that really transcends to building a business long term.
Yeah, and I'll say that too for my law firm, right? One of my businesses, and the number one way that you can make new money is that you lead with value, not just asking. And not even just, hey, this is what I do, here are my services that you can just review on our website. But actually, sometimes I will approach clients by just saying, hey, did you know these are things that I'm seeing on your website, on your terms of service, on the contracts that you're using? And just to be like, here's some things that you can use right now to fix that. Also, I'm here if you need anything. So it's a little invite, but you lead with, I don't need anything in return. And that really does generate a ton of new business.
Oh, it's critical. I mean, if you think about, the speaking engagement. So I do, when people ask me who I am, there's always 4 answers. And it's almost kind of a joke at this point. So by trade, Steve Strum, Financial Advisor, the stocks box, mutual funds, all the things you would expect me to say. Of course, the TV show that you came on as a guest. So there's that. So that's always fun. That's kind of like Good Morning America without Al Roker, local Florida version of it. And then you've got Steve Strum, the speaking guy. I'm going to come back to that. My wife and I actually own a charitable organization. So we try to help, those that are disadvantaged. Relevancy, no matter who I talk to, I'm relevant about something. But I want to focus on the speaking engagement thing, because I think that that's a very key piece to what you said about building value. I know how it feels to be $150,000 in student loan debt. I've been there, right? My family, I'm the first guy. My dad was, in the, in industry, but it was W-2. My brother's in the Army. My mom was a blood analyst at a hospital, right? I'm the first person to take the jump into the entrepreneurship from my family. But one of the things that I took with me is never losing that common touch of people, of understanding I have a mortgage of debt in student loans that I can now be a doctor, lawyer, whatever, right? Whatever that mountain of debt is for you is relative to what you're trying to accomplish. 20,000 of something is a mountain of debt for somebody. 200,000 of student loan debt is a mountain of debt for somebody else. But it's all relative. And so for probably, for the last 10 years, I've been doing speaking engagements for free, right? Whenever I do an event, it's free. Nobody pays. If you're in the medical and legal community, it's worth continuing education for your own brand or for your licensure. I've spent more time talking about how to help people get out of student loan conundrum that's changed over the last couple of years than I probably have talked to them about their financial circumstances. But what happens is, as a financial advisor, I'd love to take somebody's money and do the investment thing. I don't think I have a moral obligation to at least find out what their debt structure is looking like before I can make that recommendation, because otherwise, I'm just throwing stuff against the wall, hoping it's going to stick. And is that truly in their best interest? So I've been doing that free stuff for years. And people come to me and say, hey, I've got a question about X. And now it's gotten to a point where I don't need to tell them the services about Y, because they already know about Y. And they're like, you're the guy, you're the financial guy. Can you please help me out with the student loan debt? Oh, by the way, I have questions about, and then they will bring it to my attention. And, I've received a lot of criticism in my career with that. Because a lot of people have been of the opinion, they're like, Steve, why are you giving this stuff away for free? You should sell it. And I'm like, well, but then it is, number one, is that a potential conflict of interest? Number two, is that really helping people, or is that really helping yourself? Zig Ziglar used to say, very, very famous guy in, professional change management. If you help enough people get what they want, you will get what you want. And when it comes to legacy, I don't want to walk into a room and have 90 people go screaming the other way because they're like, uh-oh, here he comes, right? I want them to give me a hug, even if they're not clients. Sometimes they're the best relationships I have.
If we were to say that the way not to be a broke musician, a broke music business or other business owner can be consolidated into 4 things, and let me know if you agree with this. 1, you need to review your books right? Your finances, and you need to have a way that you actually look at them, right? So we talked about a P&L, have something where you say, this was my income, this is what I spent. And so you have an actual oversight. Number two, we do want to be able to cut expenses if necessary to make sure that there's built-in amounts in your monthly income that you can dedicate to things not just living expenses. Number three, that we want you to invest into your education, that is incredibly important. What you don't know is what's causing you to lose money right now in your business and what you're doing with your career. And then number four, that when it comes to making new money, it's really about leading with value, because you give something of value, people will remember you, they'll come back, they'll ask for your help. And these are at least four of the ways that we discussed during this call of how to make money and be successful.
With the one addition to the number three one, and I will actually use your and my profession as a great example. There are some things that people can't learn on their own. And I will say contract law. Great thing, right? You talk about musicians, and I know I've been following you for a while now, and I know that that's like the big thing, right? Be careful on your contract. Be careful how much you give up for the music guy, right? You hear the stories, and of course, as a layperson in the industry, I don't know your industry as well as you do, both as well your profession as well as your passion, the contract, right? And that transcends to musician, doctor, lawyer. Everybody's going to sign a contract for some sort of professional service. So if you're a musician and you don't know what the heck you're looking at on a contract and you're excited to be a musician, maybe don't sign it right there. It is okay to tell somebody, you know what, I need to have my team look at this. Even if in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, my team is, nothing, right? Because it's okay to say that. It's exciting to be, you're a music artist, sign here, right? Hey, financial advisor, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, sign here. Hey, I'm getting into business with you. Let's set up what's called a buy-sell agreement, which is our ability, the rules of you and I owning a business together, sign here. It is 100% okay to tell somebody, if you don't have that requisite skill set, let me talk to my team about it. And then, of course, when you leave, you can say, okay, I got to go find a team. Ha, 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 ha. But no, your 4 points are right on point. The only caveat is, there are just some things, like I don't know how to file a lawsuit. I know what happens when that
I love
happens.
it. You're basically saying get help with the stuff you don't know how to do. And when it comes to contracts, which is clear, get them reviewed by a professional.
Right. I'm not going to be able to change the transmission of my car as much as I'd like to. I mean, I know the concept of it, but good luck finding it in today's modern vehicles. There does become a point by which you really do need to have that professional service. But for most people, all you hear is cost, but it's actually cost recovery. Because if I have to spend $1,000 to hire you to look at a contract, right, 2 hours of your time, whatever that is, well, in most people are like, oh, it's $1,000, but it's going to save you multiples of that later, especially if you get into a bad record deal or if you get into a bad business deal and it's not very clear what happens. Krystle and Steve start a business, we fall in love professionally. And then, what happens when we fall out of love? How do we divorce that business and make it equitable? On another side, if let's say I'm married and I die, do you really want to be half in business with your former business partner's widow? That kind of stuff. And those things can be hugely cost savings in the future just by getting that professional involved.
Stephen Strum, you're amazing and such a wealth of knowledge. As a financial advisor, please tell the people, where can they hire you? Where can they learn more? Tell about your TV show, your charity. Please give a quick overview.
Sure. Okay. So I'll give you the four people. All right. So Steve Strum, financial advisor. I serve as a wealth management advisor for Northwestern Mutual's wealth management company. I mean, literally, if you Googled or went to whatever your favorite gram is, hashtag Steve Strum, you'll find me. It's either myself or my son. He is a professional BattleBot builder, which is a thing for another time. But yeah, you got hashtag Steve Strum. Always find me there. Steve Strum online. Stephen Strum, my former name, my formal name. That's it. You'll find me there. Steve Strum at nm.com. That's Steve Strum, financial advisor. If you ever want to go look at the TV show, literally Google Steve Strum Jacksonville Buzz. You'll find content. Favorite one out there, the most watched one. I do a lot of charity stuff. So one year we did a breast cancer thing, and I actually went dressed to this TV show as Rizzo. So the Rizzo is, for everybody who doesn't know what Rizzo is, she is one of the lead pink ladies from the movie Grease. I actually went dressed. I did shave just so my facial hair, so it didn't look too dramatic. That's number one watch video. You can find that easily on the hashtag Steve Strum or iwannabuzz.com. The speaking engagement stuff, that's a lot of stuff's hosted on my website. And then the charity business, that is pervasive. I actually try not to promote that. What I try to do for the charity stuff is I actually use that arm to help other people. I'll give you an example. We have something in Jacksonville, Florida called the Jacksonville Area Legal Aid, which is attorney services for people that can't afford them, generally at-risk people, like battered women type of thing, people that can't afford stuff, but they're in crisis of some kind. So we did a charity event that we paid for, open bar. We did a thing, and any money that was raised on that went back to Jala. So it's not about Steve's charity. It's about me helping other people's charities, get the light that they need and some of the funding.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to link all the things down in the description of the
All
video.
the things.
Steve, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to chatting with you again. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks, y'all.